So the other metabolic pathways. So we have discussed about the glycolysis, we have discussed about the citric acid cycle or the TCA cycle, and also the oxidative phosphorylation, in which the glucose is, it is oxidized and it is converting to some other product so that it can be utilized in our body for the synthesis of the or the generation of the ATP. But besides this, it's not only the carbohydrate or the glucose that only undergo the pathway. There are or we can say in a simple word, like we are eating the food that not only composed of the carbohydrate or not only the glucose. We also eat the fat, the lipid, the protein is there. So all these macromolecule or all these biomolecules, they are also metabolized in our body. So in this lecture we'll discuss about the other metabolic pathway beside the glucose. So glycolysis and the citric acid cycle, they connect, means they connect to this other metabolic pathway. So so far we have looked upon the oxidative breakdown of the glucose isolation, isolated from the cells, overall metabolic economy, and in this lecture we'll learn about that how the glycolysis and the citric acid cycle or the TCA cycle are the major intersection of the cells. Catabolic, catabolic means where the particular biomolecule, it is breaking down in a particular pathway. So the glycolysis and the citric acid cycle are the catabolism reaction only, where the glucose is breaking down into some or into some particular compound, and these are the multi-step reaction. But the glycolysis and the TCA cycle, these are the major intersection of not only the catabolism, means they also support the anabolism also. Anabolism also means the some product or intermediate product are also synthesized in the reaction. So they also support the anabolism pathway also. So let's discuss about all this metabolic pathway where both the catabolism and the anabolism is supported. So, in the previous lecture, we have discussed about what? We have discussed that the glucose is metabolized. Now, here we also eat different type of the foods. And so, let's see how the oxidation of the fatty acid is possible. So, this particular diagram, it is showing the oxidation of the fatty acid. The fatty acid, suppose take example of the 16 carbon saturated fatty acid, that is palmitate. Okay, just example, there are more number of carbons are present in the fatty acid, but here we are taking this particular example. Now, what happened? It will initially join to the coenzyme A, which is written here as coenzyme ASH, and this particular reaction, it is using the ATP, means it requiring the energy or the investment is ATP. Now, degradation of the fatty acid then proceed by the stepwise formation, we can see, and it is proceed by the stepwise oxidation that is coupled to the formation of the FADH2 and the NADH, and also the removal of the 2 carbon unit as the acetyl coenzyme A. Okay, so this is removed as the acetyl coenzyme A. So the derivation of the energy from the lipid, this is how the oxidation of fatty acid, it is coming, or we can say the energy is derived from the lipid. Now, energy in the form of the ATP, they can be derived not only from the breakdown of the glucose, but also from the degradation of the other organic molecule with the glycolysis and the citric acid cycle, again playing a very important role. Now, the two major principal storage form of the energy within the cell are the, polysaccharide are there and lipids are there. So these two are the storage energy organic molecule, we can say polysaccharide and the lipid, which can be broken down as needed by the cell to produce the ATP. Okay, so the polysaccharide, it is broken down into the free sugar. It is broken down into the free sugar. Okay, and again the sugar is there, then it is metabolized by the glycolysis and then the Krebs cycle. Now the lipid is there. The lipid, however, even a more efficient storage molecules, because lipid consists of primarily of the hydrocarbons chain, which consist of the CH bond, and they are more reduced than the carbohydrate. That is why the oxidation of the lipid, they yield substantially the more energy per weight of the starting material. Okay, so they produce the more energy than the polysaccharide or than the sugar. For example, fat is there. Okay, so fat basically the triacyl glycerol is there. They are the major storage of the lipid, and the first step in the utilization is their breakdown of the fat into the fatty acid and the glycerol. Okay, though it is not shown in this particular diagram, but the fat, it is broken down into the fatty acid and the glycerol fat. Okay, now each fatty acids, then what, it will join with the coenzyme A here, yielding a fatty acid, fatty acyl coenzyme A at the cost of the 1 ATP. Okay, now the fatty acids are then degraded in the stepwise oxidation process, 2 carbon at a time, yielding the acetyl coenzyme A plus a fatty acyl coenzyme A shorter by 1 2 carbon unit. Okay, so we can see the fatty acyl is there. Now earlier it is 16 carbon, so it is shorted by the 1 2 carbon unit. Now each round of the oxidation, they also yields the 1 molecules of the NADH and the 1 molecule of the FADH2. The acetyl coenzyme A, which is generated this here, then enter into the citric acid cycle, and the degradation of the remainder of the fatty acid, they continues in the same manner. Okay, so this is how the oxidation of the fatty acid generally taking place, and since the 1 ATP is used to start the process, so the net gain is the 130 ATP per molecule of the per molecule of the